Look, there's two theories attached to Sunday's decision by Queensland Premier Palaszczuk to get into the weeds on the controversial topic of voluntary assisted dying, or euthanasia, as it's most widely known. It's even more odd when you consider that today the major churches here in Queensland have come out and condemned the Labor policy to bring forward a conscience vote on the issue in February next year. In fact, I've got the Archbishop, the Catholic Archbishop Mark Coleridge, joining us very shortly. This is a month before the Law Reform Commission report was due to be handed down on the voluntary assisted dying laws. Now, alienating the Catholics and the Anglicans 13 days out from an election is an interesting move. There are 1.1 million Catholics in Queensland and about 1 million Anglicans. Now, the first assumption is that Labor has internal polling showing that it's so far in front leading into this election that it can throw out some key policy initiatives without fear of being beaten. That's the first assumption. That's pretty risky because Labor only has a two-seat majority. The second assumption, of course, is that it was a brain fade. Somebody got it wrong. Somebody has stupidly put it out there in the Premier's campaign launch speech because it seemed like a good idea at the time. It's so not Anastasia Palaszczuk. Now, she's probably the most risk-averse politician I've ever seen, certainly in Queensland. Which brings us, of course, to the obvious question, why? Labor went hard on pro-choice, abortion up to 32 weeks, with the right medical sanction, and it was seen as a major victory for the left faction, headed up, of course, now by Stephen Miles, the Deputy Premier, but at the time by the former Deputy Premier, Jackie Trad. Now it's going full steam ahead on euthanasia, another one of those contentious social issues that divide people on both sides of politics. Now, the Catholic Church says Premier Palaszczuk has reneged on a clear commitment in May this year not to rush the legislation. The Catholic Church Archbishop Mark Coleridge, who of course we'll have on the show shortly, he was once the Pope's speechwriter, smart guy, speaks 9 languages. He said the backflip was clearly political. And the Anglicans say it's also political. And what the Labor Party risks by going early on this issue is a backlash from the churches, who wield enormous power with their parishioners. Now, remember the Longman by-election back in 2018? Labor won it, remember? They threw everything but the kitchen sink because it was a test for Bill Shorten's leadership. Now, at the time, Malcolm Turnbull's decision to withdraw funding from the church schools incurred their wrath, and Labor won comfortably. Now, if you fast forward to the main election on May 18 last year, after the funding was sorted, churches backed the LNP. Guess what? The LNP pulled off a stunning win. Labor didn't even remotely have Longman at risk. So if the churches turn on Palaszczuk, and that now seems inevitable, expect Labor to lose a lot of votes come next Saturday. For a well-oiled political organisation like Labor, and they are clearly much better than the LNP and have shown that in the past 2 or 3 weeks when it comes to campaigning in Queensland. This is a massive own goal. Why would they even go there? Why would you go there just before an election? They've been so disciplined and on message, yet now they've opened the door to a big swathe of votes going the other way. Their normal modus operandi, this is the Labor Party and some Liberal governments too, is to win the election and then renege on policies. Being honest, that's not the Labor way. It's given the LNP some hope. If the religious vote goes en masse to the LNP on euthanasia and abortion, maybe it's not quite over just yet.